of my time. I've been involved in and around Apple for over 30 years, and my favorite part of being in this industry is being a part of events like this and being with folks like you. I was born and raised in the same town as Steve Jobs, actually. So the garage where Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started Apple Computer is just across town from where I grew up. So there was something in the water there that convinced me that I wanted to be a part of this as well. For today, I'd like to talk a bit about passkeys, and I'll also mention a little bit about how we're thinking about that at ERU and how we've applied that in our product. But most of this is meant to be of general interest that should hopefully be interesting and helpful to everyone that's here. So a little bit about setting this up. I had a call with my father. This was a few months ago now, where he and Robert might remember this story because I've told it before in Australia. But my dad called me up and he says, I'm on the phone with IT help, and they say there's something wrong with my computer. I've got a Windows PC, it's infected or something. They're trying to help me set it up. And he's asked me to do something that sounds a little bit suspicious, and so I thought to call you. And I said, well, Dad, you should have called me first, right? Why are you talking to these other folks, right? And he said, well, he wants me to do this thing. And then I said, hold on, have you given them any money yet? And he says, well, no, but he actually wants me to write out a paper check and hold it up to the camera so they can get the numbers off of that to collect payments. It's like, Dad, stop right now. Like, walk over to your router and unplug it, right? I've got to get on a plane. I'll call you in a couple hours, right? We'll get things sorted. So I get off the plane, call my dad. He's fine. I removed the thing that they installed. We've run checks and done all this. My dad's fine. In case you were worried about my dad, he's all right. But then he says, okay, well, now that you've got that sorted, I've got another question for you. I've just signed into Amazon. They've asked me to set up a passkey, right? And I said, well, Dad, actually good timing, right? Have you got 30 minutes? Because I got a presentation, right, to share with you. So that's what you're going to get today, all right? So I've been talking about F1 this year. I've kind of picked that as my theme. I like lots of different things. I'm quite nerdy. Last year was Dungeons and Dragons. This year it's Formula One, but we're ready to go. Formula One has a lot of safety procedures built into it. So you might recognize a safety car they pull out. If there's debris on the track or some other condition they've got to clean out, they slow down the cars and they have to follow the safety car at a lower speed. There's other things too. When they pull into the pit lane, there is a pit speed limiter that's put in place. So no matter what the driver does, they can't go more than 80 kph, right? It won't let them, right? It limits them. There's other things too, like the visors can get dirty, oil off the track, dirt, debris, bugs, mosquitoes, depending on where they are in the world. And so they just have these tear off films over the visor. They just rip them off, right? And they'll stack 8, 10, 15 layers, right? And they'll pull them off. There's lots of other safety procedures. One of them is this Hans system. So previous to 2003, all they had was the harness and the helmet, and that was fine. But then there was a series of fatalities, right, where 3 people died in the same season. And they realized that like the speed of the cars and what was happening with the technology was exceeding what the human body could handle and what humans could survive. And so they introduced this system with the tethers, right, to prevent the neck from falling forward or being slammed forward in a crash like this. So they had to implement some new technology to adapt to changing conditions, to keep people safe, right? And also to account for what the limits of the human body could handle or what humans could handle. And so that's my connection to passwords, all right? So passwords are bad, right? Why are they bad? Someone in the audience tell me. What's wrong with passwords? If you make them easy to remember, they're easy to guess. You forget them, you've got to write them down or store them somewhere. Sorry? They could get stolen. right? If you want to make them secure, you've got to make them long. Now they're hard to remember. You have password reuse, right? Where people use the same password, or you implement idiotic password policies where you rotate them every 90 days. So now all you've done is add a digit to the end of the password that increments, right, over time. Yeah, there's lots of reasons they're bad, but they fall into three categories, right? They could be attacked with a brute force sort of attack. They could be susceptible to some sort of social engineering or social hack, or a data breach. So if we think about these three possible attacks, on the brute force side, it's not really practical. Most devices have some sort of rate limiting built in to if you're doing an interactive login where you're typing or presenting the password. So your phone will lock if you get the passkey wrong too many times in a row. Your Mac will do the same. Any system you log into online over the internet should have rate limiting built into it. You can't send enough tries in order to brute force an attack unless you have a local copy of the password file. Okay. Well, if you have a local copy of the password file, you've got other problems, right, to deal with. But you can see, like, at 12, 14 characters with just even lowercase letters, what are we talking about? 18 million years, right, to guess a 14 character lowercase password. So brute force attack is not really something that we're worried about. Social engineering, though, is. 93% of cyber attacks involve phishing in some manner, right? It includes phishing as a component of the attack. So ringing people up, hey, this is IT, we're ready to ship you a new MacBook Pro. Just need to confirm your details before I ship it over to you. Could you tell me, your email, confirm your password, your mother's maiden name, your social security number if you live in the US, right? These kinds of things. And people will happily comply and say, oh, yeah, I'm happy to confirm my details so I can get my new MacBook Pro or MacBook Neo, maybe, sent to me. So this is part of why passwords are bad. And shared secrets are bad because I've got a copy of my password, but so does the service that I'm trying to log into. They also have a copy of my password. And so if they're breached, right, now they've got my password along with, 18 million other people's passwords, and they have usually an email address that's associated with that password. So they have an example of a known good email and a known good password that go together. And it's quite trivial these days to write a script that just tries that email password combination across 1,000 different sites in a minute, and you've identified a whole bunch of places where you might be able to use that combination. So one of the really big risks is that the sites or the services that I use also have my password. Okay, that's a risk for us. So that's where passkeys come in, is they address a lot of these shortcomings of passwords, and they make it better to use. Okay, so let's talk about these three things, and why they're good. So first of all, there is no shared secret in the passkey setup. So we're using asymmetric keys where, I keep one half of the key pair as the private key, and the site or service has the other half of that key pair, and we'll call it the public key, right? They don't make it public, but they have that key. And I can treat it like a public key because if that site gets breached, they only have one half of the key. I've still got the private half. So that's okay. I'm protected in that case. When you're authenticating to a site, at no point is that key ever sent across the internet, right? So it's always local. It's a bit like Kerberos, right? In that sense, that in order to do the authentication, you don't have to send the secret. I'll talk about how it's done in just a bit. It's also phishing resistant for a few reasons. One is most users never actually see the key, right? It's inside some sort of authenticator that they unlock and use, so they can't repeat it to someone over the phone, for example. Also, the key is bound to a specific site. So the computer will not use the key in an authentication request to a different site. So you've seen the attacks where you get a link, right? A phishing link that takes you to a site that looks like the authentic site, and you type in your username and password, and you get a failure. It takes you back to the login screen. Must have mistyped it, fat fingered. You type it again, and you're through. Well, it's because the first site you saw was the fake one. When it collected and captured your username and password, it redirected you to the real site, and now you've logged in successfully and you think everything's fine. Well, that can't happen with Passkey because you go to the fake site and the computer will not use the passkey with that other site because it's a different URL, it's a different endpoint for authentication, all of that. And then the last bit here, which is important, is the keys are hardware protected or can be hardware protected. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. So in turn, right, this is an illustration for Microsoft, so thanks to them for providing it, of how the authentication flow works. And when you go and visit a site, it asks for authentication. The site sends you a challenge, right, asking you to authenticate. Then you respond, but that response is signed with your private key. So when the signed response goes back to that site, they use the other half of the key, the public key, to decrypt or verify the signature on the signed response. And that's how they know that you have the private key, right? They're talking to the device that holds the other half of the key. At no point does that private key ever leave my computer. I'm not sending it. What I'm sending is the signed response over to that site. That's how the authentication is done. Now, the passkeys could be handled in software where they're portable, or they could be device bound where they're tied to the hardware. Apple's approach to this is a bit of a hybrid, right? It uses the secure enclave to generate the key pair and to secure that key pair. It does, however, use iCloud keychain in order to move that passkey across different devices. The key is protected by iCloud as it's going through that. So the hardware keys are entangled with your iCloud account keys to make sure that the private key is still protected even as it moves across devices. In theory, right? Or maybe we should say, I can't verify this because I can't do the math, but Apple says, right, that the key is protected the whole way, right? And Apple can't see the key either because of the way it's entangled between hardware and iCloud account. So that's cool. With the actual signing process, I'll talk about this in a minute when we get to the secure enclave and all that. Okay. So sync passkeys, and they could just be hardware bound, where they only live on that device, they never leave that device. Okay. The first two we're familiar with, right? Something you know, something you have. The other layer of security that comes in with passkeys is something that you are, the biometric component. So the intent here is that by using your fingerprint for Touch ID, Face ID, whatever, it just adds another layer of security to protecting that passkey. Now, in many cases, you can still get to it on an Apple device, right, by just typing in your password, because the Touch ID is really a convenience feature to unlock your account or to provide your password. But that's part of the signal that can be used in this authentication flow. Was biometrics included in the process of asking for the passkey to sign the response? And so it's possible to require that the biometric authentication is part of the flow in order to just add another layer of protection on there and have something else included, right? And that's we could argue about ways to attack that or compromise it, but when you compare it to the alternatives like sending an SMS message as a second factor or other kinds of multi-factor authentication, this is better. Okay. Um, Now, the actual hardware implementation. So I'm more familiar with the Apple side than TPM2 for Windows or Secure Element for Android. But in Secure Enclave, the Apple's documentation says something like the the key, the passkey, never leaves the secure enclave. I think it's a little misleading, I think, right? Because the passkey obviously goes to iCloud Keychain. It's written to disk at some point, right? So it's persisted so that you can use it. But what is true is that the passkey is protected by the secure enclave and encrypted with its hardware keys when it's written to disk. So even if you could pull the bits off, you can't get to the passkey. The passkey is only unlocked, if you will, and used inside of the secure enclave, which has its own processing and its own memory. So when the challenge comes in and it's going to sign the response, that operation of signing the response happens inside of the secure enclave. And the only thing that emerges out to the rest of the system is the signed response itself. So what is true is that the passkey is never accessible to the rest of the operating system or the rest of the device at any time, right? It's only accessible within the secure enclave itself. So again, more layers of protection in this whole process. Um, all of this depends on cryptography. That's familiar to us from using secure websites, TLS, asymmetric keys, and public key infrastructure. All the concepts are here. One sort of interesting detail is that all the modern cryptography methods use elliptic curve cryptography. So this is a representation of that. Um, the other popular method is the RSA algorithms, which depend on factoring very large numbers that are products of two primes. And there's a lot of operations, and there's no known algorithm to like shorten that process of factoring those large numbers. So it takes lots of operations. It takes lots of time. That's how we get to the 18 million years to, to guess at a password, that sort of thing. Um, Elliptic key curves is a little bit different. You take 2 points on this curve, you make a chord between them, and then you flip it over the x-axis and make another tangent. And so you repeat this process over and over again. And again, there's no good algorithm to shorten the calculation of this process if you repeat it lots of times. And so you've just got to go through the steps lots of times to figure out what the possibilities are. So the key difference between RSA and elliptic curve cryptography is that the key sizes can be much smaller with elliptic curve, about 12 times smaller. So if you have a 256-bit key with elliptic curve cryptography, that's equivalent to like a 3,000-bit key with RSA. So this makes it possible to use on very small, low-powered, low-compute devices, and they can still use this effectively. So passkeys generally today use this. There's some potential concern about what happens in a post-quantum world, because if a quantum computer can run loads of possibilities simultaneously, right, then potentially it could run through all those operations in a very short amount of time. So there's a lot of work being put into figuring out how to create other processes here that would be more protected in a post-quantum world. But we're okay so far. The current key sizes, we think it would require something like a 6,000 qubit quantum computer to work on this effectively in a period of time less than a year and guess at them. But today there's like a 1,000 qubit quantum computer that's out there. There's plans for a 6,000 a 4,000 qubit computer, but we'll see, right? something to worry about a bit, but maybe not today. All right, so let me show you just a little bit about how this works. Oh, not meant to show that yet. Um, so what we're doing at Erie, I'm gonna log into a site here using a passkey, and I'll highlight a couple things that have some friction in them today. So the passkey needs to be stored somewhere and have an authenticator that's going to respond to this challenge and sign the response. So you'll notice that one password here has very helpfully volunteered to respond to that. So I've got the plugin installed in my browser, but I don't actually want to use one password for this. So it is it was just successful at being the first to volunteer, right? But if I dismiss it, what I'll see here is the ERU access or yeah, passwords, right, would come up. And if I hit continue, it's doing a couple things at this point. It's going to ask for my biometric authentication, but it's also doing a an evaluation of the security posture of the device, and it's going to include that information as part of the authentication flow. So my device will tell ERU identity, right, that I've unlocked the passkey, signed the response so that it goes back to ERU identity, but it's also including some metadata about the device, right? Its security posture, is disk encryption on, is passcode policy in place, has it been jailbroken, if it was iOS, that sort of thing. OS version, other details, so that as an admin, you can include some authorization policies along with verifying that the passkey is on that trusted device. So I'm in ERU, right? You've seen some of this before. If you're not, oops, if you're not familiar with, hit the wrong button. I was trying just to expand the window by double clicking. So let me, now I've hit the wrong thing. Okay, we've got it back. So you're familiar with what we do with device management. So you've seen things like our assignment maps and how you can, set up your device management controls and all that. This is not having to do with passkeys, but I've just got to show this one bit. This is my favorite part, right, of the assignment map. Is if you pick a specific device, I'll zoom out a little bit. Um, it will show you the path it takes through the map, which items will be applied to the device. And what's cool about this, I think, is, of course, with any device management service, you can see the items that are being applied to a device. Like we all do that, all of them. But what you can see here is what's not being applied to a device very easily. So when you're trying to troubleshoot or understand, for instance, why has this not been done? Uh, you can't read that at all, can you? Um, I'll zoom in this way instead. You're trying to see why something's not been done. You say, oh, okay, well, you know, this computer's on Tahoe, but it's not part of the early adopters group, right? It's very clear, easy to see. We've got other things in here as well, our EDR product and security features, vulnerability management, automated patching for lots of known vulnerabilities. But this is the part that's new, right? Is this identity product. So we built this with passkeys from the foundation. So there are no passwords in ERU identity. The whole thing from the ground up was designed for a passwordless future. And for the reasons that I've outlined, right? That we see where the industry is going. Like passkeys are more secure. This is a better method. We didn't want to just accept a world where passkeys and passwordless are bolted on to existing identity solutions. We thought there was room to innovate and create something new that was designed with passkeys at the core or at the foundation of it. And so if I take a look in here, and we could see, things you would expect, but I'll pull myself up just so we can understand a bit about how login flow I've just done works. So you can see I've got a couple authenticators registered here, and BG's, this is actually my computer here. Now I've also got one password in there as well, so I could use either one. Uh, The the authenticator is is added at the invitation. If you want to add additional authenticators, you can do that from an existing trusted device. So now we've got a cryptographic lineage, right, between all the authenticators. And as an admin, you can see what's been done to generate these passkeys and where they live. An important detail, each authenticator has its own passkey pair with Eru identity. So they're not shared, they're not moving between devices. I add another authenticator through a process I can show you in a moment. And I know how that authenticator got added and when it happened and what device was used to authorize the next authenticator. And now it's got its own passkey. If either a service gets compromised or a device gets compromised, I have a clear method to invalidate that passkey and keep everything else secure. So there's that. What else is important here? Let me show you the desktop app. So the authenticator is, you saw the UI in the web browser where it popped up and asked for the biometric authentication, but there is an app that goes with it. It's including data it knows about the device. So this is part of that response back to Eru identity to tell you about the security posture of the device during authentication. This can be modified and expanded as you like. From the home screen, you'd see a list of apps that you're enabled for. So just like your Okta dashboard or your Entra dashboard, right? We have that as well, but not only in the web interface, but also in the app itself. So if you want to take a look at what you're allowed to do, you've got it built in right here. This is where you would add a new device, right? If you wanted to validate or authenticate with another additional authenticator in order to do all this. Cool. What else do I want to show you about identity? So there's lots of things that you would expect. One little bit, maybe it's interesting as I wrap up, is the use of this is for single sign-on into lots of different applications. So all your SaaS apps, you create the SAML connections here in order to enable single sign-on. So I'll pick this RSA app as an example. You'll notice that the configuration here, there is a visual representation of it, a GUI if you like, but there is also a code view of the same configuration. So you can see the JSON that's behind it. You can edit in either view, the visual view or the code view, in order to set this up. If I want to make a change, you'll notice there's this clone and edit button. So I'm going to make a new version of this configuration. When I do that, you'll see the version number here is incremented. I could make a change to this. I just hit cancel, didn't I? If I edit this, I can make a change. And then here I'll go to the visual view and I'll just add something to the description, right? And when I save this, that draft has been saved as a new version and it asks if I want to set it as current. So I've got a flow here where, hey, I've made some changes. It could go through a review process, right? I can make it current. Now that I've done that, I could still see the version history. I could roll back to a previous version if I like. I could set that one as current. I could remove a version, all those things that I like. So, we've got, I think, a couple interesting ideas here in the way that we've designed this and set this up, and we're kind of excited to bring that approach to some of the other areas of our product, right? But all that to say, right, that we really believe in this, right? Passkeys are useful for for us, right? But I think they're useful for everyone. Something that we should be adopting because it is better than passwords. It's more secure, it's phishing resistant, they're hardware protected from the major manufacturers. Microsoft, Google, and Apple are all together on this, right? And working together to make sure that passkeys are fully supported across all the different major operating systems and protected at many different layers and different levels. Um, and therefore, I think worthy of our attention and interest. Now, um, I did mention that my theme for the year was F1. So what I've included in my talks, right? But you've also seen it maybe at our table and with that big Lego set we're set to give away. So Jack has the name of our winner. This has been randomly selected from all the folks that stopped by and got their back. All right. Um, let me just close by saying this, right? It's a tremendous privilege to be with you today. Thank you for your attention. Hopefully, you heard something interesting about passkeys and whatnot. Um, Maybe you got one little nugget out of it. But I just want to acknowledge, right, how much I love this community and how much I love being a Mac admin. I've been at it for a long time, right? But part of what has sustained me and part of what has allowed me to do well in my career is the generosity and the help of others, right? I've been coming to events like this for a long time. And when I was young in my career, right, it was other people looking out for me and sharing what they know with me, helping me grow up. Some of those people are still around and in the room with us. Uh, some are gone, right? But um, what makes this community special, right, is the commitment and the drive to share and lift each other up, right, and to help everyone along. And so I'm so grateful for all of you that you've come today and been here together to do that, to lift each other up and to share what you know and to bring everyone along. And so thank you to all of you for what a great conference. And thanks to Misha and the other organizers that have put this together because it is worth our time and effort to be here. So thank you.